What's up, everyone? Today we have the honor of interviewing a principal many consider to be a legend in the city of Durham, North Carolina. Listen, he's currently the principal of the year for Durham Public Schools, again in Durham, North Carolina. He also has received that honor twice within 10 years. And I'm going to tell you, this district has over 50 principals, so that's no minor feat. He was selected as a regional finalist for State Principal of the Year in North Carolina, one of only 9 individuals selected for that honor. Scholars at his school have consistently led the district and state in the total amount of scholarship money offered, consistently eclipsing over $18 million. And finally, during his tenure, enrollment has steadily increased, despite serving what society deems as one of the most vulnerable student populations. We have the pleasure today of interviewing Dr. William Logan of the historic Hillside High School in Durham, North Carolina. Let's jump in. All right, let's jump in. Dr. Logan, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the Principal Jowers channel.
Yes,
Excited for this opportunity.
Excited
I
to
know
be
you
here.
well,
Yes, sir.
but it's a lot of people that may not know you outside of the North Carolina area, but you're a wealth of knowledge that we are excited you're going to be able to share today.
Yes, sir.
Before we jump in, though, tell us, who is William Logan?
I think of myself as just a regular guy, trying to do the right thing by people I encounter on an everyday basis, especially where students are concerned. Professionally, this is going into my 27th year as an educator.
You're about to be done.
Yeah. Started off as a high school English teacher in St. George, South Carolina. And actually started in administration there as well as a director of an alternative school, and left there to come to North Carolina. Spent 3.5 years as an assistant principal between Wake and Durham counties, and then I got my first principalship at Hillside New Tech High School in 2007, and been enjoying every level of it, man. Again, just the opportunity to serve both students and the faculty is what I delight myself in most, and I think that kind of describes me professionally in a nutshell. 20
plus years in the profession, 19 as an administrator?
19, yeah, just about.
What keeps you going?
Just to see the success that our students have, that our teachers have, my colleagues who are not certified, just to see them grow and develop and accomplish the goals that they set out for themselves. That's what keeps me going. I tell people all of the time, like, I find it a blessing that, I wake up every morning, never disgruntled, never, bemoaning the idea of having to go to work. When I know so many people around me, they do have that complaint. Like, a lot of people don't want to go to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I look forward to it every day, looking forward to serve and just trying to push people to, achieve and work to their optimal levels when it's all said and done.
Tell me, when we think about people right now that are teachers aspiring to be principals one day, assistant principals aspiring to be principals one day, what are some words of wisdom that you wish someone had told you when you started this journey?
Wow. I had the fortune of having great people around me when I first got into administration formally. When I started in South Carolina, one of the things that piqued my interest in being or becoming an administrator is in how I saw it in my mind is like my current principal. And at that time, she was my current principal. And in my mind, I always thought like, well, if she could do it, I can do
it. Yeah.
And, no slight against her. But there were no words of encouragement. She gave me opportunities to do my practicum and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I got to North Carolina where I was surrounded, specifically in Durham. The principal who brought me to Durham actually taught me a whole lot about leadership. And then her network of colleagues, her being Eunice Sanders, Dr. Eunice Sanders, and she connecting me to some of her former assistant principals who became principals. You know, they would always lend words of encouragement and lend me their wisdom, you know, when I would run up against challenges. But what was most impactful was the fact that, you know, they gave me more insight about different things before challenges even presented themselves. And I think that was a part of the culture that she kind of like curated at Hillside High School, because I can remember distinctly teachers one day pulling me to the side, a group of teachers, and these were some of the veteran teachers who pulled me to the side to talk to me about an email that I had sent the faculty. And essentially they were telling me like, hey, like, you know, you'll catch more flies with honey than you would with vinegar. You know, be direct with who you're, you know, sending correspondence to versus sending it blanket statements to the entire faculty, because you'll offend people when you do that. And I never thought about that.
Yeah.
But again, like that was the kind of atmosphere that she cultivated where people felt comfortable pouring into you. But you also have to have a receptive spirit. And I think that's where a lot of young administrators go wrong. They don't have a spirit of being receptive to different ideas, because, you know, we come in gung-ho thinking we know a lot and we want to apply the textbook theories and that kind of stuff. When in reality is like, you know, a lot of what we do is far removed from that and is rare in so many instances where you actually get to use their work.
Absolutely.
Because when you're dealing with people, you deal with people individually.
I remember you telling us one time, and for everybody out there, I was an assistant principal under Dr. Logan. Yes. And so I definitely was able to pick up a lot of gems and a lot of nuggets from him. And I remember you telling us to go to the source directly, as opposed to sending general emails to the team or sending general emails to the faculty when it only applied to a minute amount of people.
Right.
And there were plenty of people doing the right thing.
Right.
So why even contaminate the messaging by sending it to everyone when you can just go directly to that source without offending anyone?
Exactly.
And I think I've taken that with me everywhere that I have gone. I also think it's interesting that you say taking that feedback from people along your journey and not thinking that you knew everything. Listening to those mentors. It's important that we operate in excellence. So whether I'm a teacher, whether I'm an administrator, be thinking about that next thing that I want to do and just function in excellence so I'm prepared when I get to whatever that place may be. So that's good stuff. Staying with that same point, what are some myths about being a principal that you think people may be thinking? For example, we just sit in our office and we don't do anything. What are some common myths that people may think that are just complete misconceptions about the job?
That's funny, man. And I laugh because, you know, I have students who come and ask me like, look, what do you do all day? I'm like, I'm trying to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
That's what I do all day, making sure that everybody's on task, everybody's working towards the aims that we've outlined for ourselves through our school improvement plan. Whatever our school's mission is, we want to stay on track and stay focused. And so, yeah, there is that myth, like, and I would imagine there may be principals who sit in their office all day. I don't know. I can't say that I'm that guy. I'm usually on the halls. I'm in classrooms. Stopping in student services, stopping in the cafeteria to check on, or just to speak, you know, because oftentimes you get so caught up in routines, you forget other people are in the building helping to make this thing go. And so I've just learned to become more intentional about making sure that, you know, I make connections with everybody in the building. And so that's important. That people connection is important. People want to know that they're seen. People want to know that they care. And so that becomes a good way to start my day, a good way to even end my day. And even throughout the day, if I don't get to start that way, because you never know what you're going to walk into. But again, people don't see the planning, the networking,
the late hours,
the connections, this, you know, processing discipline. You know, sometimes you just need time and space to contemplate decisions. About, you know, how to move forward with a decision that you need to make. And we just don't take these things lightly, you know, especially when people's lives are involved.
Or you shouldn't, some of us.
Yeah, and you shouldn't. You know, having to make the decision to do a long-term suspension has long-lasting implications, you know.
On a lot of people.
On a lot of people. And we have to make sure that when we make decisions like that, you know, we're making them, you know, and taking everything into consideration. Same thing, you know, when you're trying to coach teachers, coach employees in general, you want to make sure that you're providing the right kind of feedback, and it's timely feedback. And again, you just don't always necessarily have these things in your pocket to pull out. Sometimes you have to go and reflect and figure out how to strategically deliver the message. Sometimes you do need to access those texts so that you can remember or reflect on different theories that are out there, you know. So because again, you just don't make or take decision making lightly, especially when people's lives are concerned. And so again, the planning, the networking, making sure that there's a connection between a healthy connection between the school and central office, just building relationships inside the building, outside of the building, that community building as well.
Absolutely.
Like people don't see that kind of work. Yeah. And people always ask why there's always something going on at Hillside, because those are the intentional relationships that we've built to further develop our students and our faculty and staff. You know, and this could be done with a variety of organizations and businesses in our community that we've done it with anyway. But yeah, there's a lot that goes on that people don't see. Yeah. And,
a typical week, how many hours would you say you have to put in?
Man, because there's always something going on at Hillside, man. And I would say,
arts, athletics,
man, at a minimum,
academics,
60 to 70.
That's the stuff I want people to hear.
Yeah, like, you're working on Saturdays. You're working sometimes
consistently.
On Sundays. Yeah. Yes. Like, it doesn't stop. And, if it's football season, and you have home games and, you're there till 11:30, 12 o'clock, shutting the stadium down, helping the athletic director. I some principals will go and leave people unattended and that kind of stuff, but, people want to know, at some point you're there beside
your visibility matters.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Especially in the most underrepresented communities. Your visibility matters.
Yeah, man.
Because you're a beacon of the community.
Yeah, people want you everywhere.
Absolutely.
And you try to make a discerted effort to be in attendance at as many of those events as possible. But I always prioritize my students. Yes. They want to see me, just like I'm at football games, they want to see me at baseball games. Just like if they see me at a basketball game, they want to see me at a softball game, at wrestling, at track and field, at swimming. This was probably the only, I didn't get a chance to see students play golf this year. And this was the first season I hadn't gotten a chance to see students compete in track. But yeah, they want to see you there. And then when students have their dances, their dance recitals and plays and chorus concerts and band concerts, and they happen.
And I think it's easy for an assistant principal to be there. Like you send representation. Right. But it's different when the principal is there. Yeah. And I don't want to underscore how critical that is to the success of a principal in building culture and building trust.
That's it.
And building companionship with the fellow staff, because staff are there as well. So it means something to them, as well as parents, as well as students that you may be working with. Yep. That visibility matters. So that means potentially time away from your family. Yep. That means not eating the meal that you wish you could have eaten. Right. But that visibility goes far. And now when you need to go into a classroom and get a kid to believe in what you're trying to do, or you have to coach a teacher, they may be more receptive because they know, like, you're about all the X's and O's, not just the academic, but the whole student, the whole family, the whole teacher, every aspect of it. So that's good stuff. What you talked about routines and a lot of the success that you've had coming from having in place consistent routines. Talk a little more about why routines are so critical to the success that you've had, but also to school transformation in general.
Absolutely. One thing we all know working with children is they count on routines. They count on what they're familiar with, and it could be something as slight as shaving off a few minutes off of a class period. That's gonna throw the day off.
off.
We usually have early release days once a month. If those aren't announced well in advance, and at least this is my experience, and communicated to the students, they don't process the half day well.
Yeah.
They just don't. And you just see all kinds of weird behaviors.
Yeah.
Same thing with adults. Like, adults get frustrated when you throw
Absolutely.
curveballs in there, and I was counting on the day being blah blah blah, and it's not. And not to say that students and teachers aren't flexible. They are, but they can always sense when you're intentional
And when you're not.
or when you're not. And people will always appreciate the intentionality.
It's almost a indirect sign of respect.
Yes.
Respect me enough
To
to
plan.
because you're expecting me to plan.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
They and like I said, they can tell when something has been thrown together versus when something is structured and well delivered. But they count on, like I said, that consistency, because if you're consistent about being well planned and it's not well planned, they'll know if you actually did it or not, or if you were the person, or as the principal, if you oversaw this process or not, because they'll tell you, like, Dr. Logan, you knew about this? Who did this? Like, because this is clearly this is nothing that you would do.
Yeah.
And so it's always interesting,
They're going to inspect what they expect.
That's it.
And that's based off the culture that you set.
That's it.
So that can be a good thing.
Hold us accountable.
Hold us accountable.
Hold us accountable. I tell the students, the parents, your primary responsibility is to hold us accountable for educating you, for providing you the safest environment that we could possibly provide, because we're holding you to that same standard.
Yeah.
And so it's only fair that you do.
I never forget, we had a parent at my last school, and we used Class Dojo. And we were anal about Class Dojo. And the parent was communicating with a new teacher on Class Dojo and wasn't getting a response, and just came to the school irate.
Right.
And the parent talked to me and the behavior support guy and was like, look, y'all got on me about not communicating using Class Dojo. This y'all stuff. Y'all got to follow y'all own. I'm like, you're right. I can't get mad at you. You're right. I'll handle that. You're right.
It's the same thing with power schools, power school and grades. And I tell our community, grades will be updated every Tuesday. So check Tuesday evening. We ask teachers to update their grades once a week at a minimum. Don't wait, after 3 weeks have elapsed and the grades haven't changed or a grade hasn't changed.
It's going to be a problem.
Yeah. And so those parents who check routinely, they will
say
send me emails.
Yep.
They will call. Sometimes they'll come, and again, this is something that we've communicated as a team, and this is what we are committing to. And so we have to be
absolutely
the same way, like that parent said, you trying to hold me accountable, so I'm holding you. Hey, it's the same thing.
That's what we want.
You can't be right and wrong at the same time.
So to that point, how do you establish a culture of professionalism?
Yes, sir.
Because so often in schools, teachers don't feel they're treated as professionals as somebody would in corporate. So how do you establish that culture of professionalism where teachers feel like they're treated as adults, they're treated as professionals, they're respected for their skill set, and not so much as children?
I can only reflect on my teaching experience, because in a way I felt like that's how I was treated, like as a child, but I also understood what my principal was trying to convey, and she was talking to me about my dress. And she's like, you dress like the kids. And, I'm just fresh out of college, attending an HBCU. So, you got to stay fresh.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought, But again, in retrospect, I can honestly say, like, yeah, she had a valid point, because you have to be able to distinguish yourself from the students. And so for me, it was just a matter of delivery, like have a different kind of conversation with me. outside of the one that you did have. And so I try to afford my teachers the same thing. Because I'm going to always engage with you as a professional. From the time I interview you, from the time you're onboarded, all throughout the process, like the whole idea is like you're a professional.
Absolutely.
That's just my expectation. Like you signed up, this is a professional setting. I expect you to engage with folks professionally, especially the students, and helping them to understand this is what our students deserve to see, regardless of.
I like that. This is what our students deserve to see.
This is what
Absolutely.
they deserve to see, regardless of where they're coming from.
Right.
Regardless of their demographics, they deserve to come into a environment that's led by professionals.
I think that speaks to your expectation.
That I think it's hard for somebody to try and lead students in a classroom where you're not being perceived, where you're not perceived as a professional.
Absolutely.
It's akin to classroom management when it's all said
Absolutely.
and done. You have to look the part first and foremost.
You got to look the part.
Let's just put
it's spoken
put it out
and
there.
unspoken.
Yeah.
And the kids may not admit it, but
it
matters.
It matters to them. It matters to them. And again, like I tell our faculty, I say, I'm not expecting you to come in here like you just stepped off of the cover of GQ or Vogue, but don't come in here like you just rolled out of bed either.
Absolutely.
Some of them will try. I've had people who would try that. Like,
it's disrespectful.
Yeah. Like, be respectful. Be respectful in your attire. We can't get so busy in our personal lives that we don't take care of our professional lives when we understand that our professional lives actually help us take care of our personal lives.
Absolutely.
So it's like it goes hand in hand. And so you manage your personal life in such a way where you have time to do your hair. You have time to put on clothes that are ironed, that kind of stuff.
I think it's almost like being an elected official.
Yeah.
Like these are our constituents. And how we present ourselves to our constituents matters.
That's it.
And while they're fighting for votes in this age of school choice, we want to create the best or present the best product.
That's it.
Where people are excited about the experience that they're going to get at our school.
That's it.
Because they can go right down the street, literally now,
and
get another experience. Or with magnet programs or any other option. There are a lot of opportunities outside of this school. And dollars follow those kids.
That's it. That's it.
And while you have this opportunity here, you may not have it at the next school. So let's take advantage of the opportunity we have.
And people need to understand, like, hey, when our enrollment decreases, you have to give back positions.
You got to give back positions.
And so, you might not be terminated, but they're going to move you somewhere. And you might be that person. And if you really love the school, then you do those things that are going to attract and retain students.
Because even if you get moved, you might get moved to a place
you don't want to be.
You don't want to be.
Yeah.
And become miserable.
That's it. That's it. And the last thing we want is for you to become miserable and disenchanted with education altogether.
Absolutely.
When you have so much to offer. But everybody has to be on the same page in that regard. So,
you talked about attending the HBCU. I did as well. Talk about the experience at your HBCU. What was that HBCU? How did it prepare you to go into leadership?
Yeah. So I had the pleasure of attending South Carolina State University and in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And by far the best thing that ever happened to me. I tell folk all the time I stumbled upon South Carolina State by actually going to a party because my cousin was already there. And I knew nothing about South Carolina State, and my plan was actually to go into the military. And went to that party, and she convinced me to apply, and then I applied, and that's how I got in there. And from the time I got there until the time I left, I had a relationship with somebody on that faculty. And that relationship was always a nurturing one where they poured into me, but they also had an expectation of me. And it got to the point where in my major, in the English department, I remember these people's names: Dr. Hudson, Dr. Green, Dr. Favors, Dr. Cassidy, Dr. Fleming. As a matter of fact, Dr. Fleming called me out of the blue this past spring just to say hello. I didn't even know how he got my number, but to know that I made that kind of an impression on him. And when I heard his voice, I knew exactly who he was.
Exactly who it was.
But it was that kind of relationship building and nurturing that I got prepared me to pursue a master's degree. Just this whole idea that you have to rise above it. There's no other option.
No other option.
That's kind of like how everything that they gave to me, that's how I took it. And it was my junior or my senior year, and Dr. Calvin Hudson, God bless his soul, told me, he and Dr. Sarah Favors, and I want to say Dr. Gus Ann Green, they were the ones that told me to go get a PhD. This is while I was an undergrad. And I was like, why would I don't understand why. Because they don't think you can. And that never left me. And so when I decided to get a PhD, although they wanted me to get one in English, I decided to get one in education, administration, and supervision. I did it because they told me to. Yeah. You know, and so it was for me a charge and a responsibility, and more important, I didn't want to let them down. And again, it was like I said, that kind of support and mentoring and opportunities that they presented while we were on campus, and tapping me for different experiences and leadership experiences in particular. You know, they just brought out the best in me while I was there, and it certainly prepared me for work, you know, at the doctoral level. Because again, even when I went to the University of Southern Mississippi, I was nervous. One, because I was in Mississippi and all of the things that you hear about Mississippi. But two, in many instances, I was the only black dude in several of my classes. And so, you know, I was, you know, always subconscious about speaking. Not because I couldn't speak, I just didn't want to say the wrong thing. Carrying the responsibility of, in my mind, like, I represent everybody,
the whole community.
Yeah.
That look like you.
That's it. And so those kinds of things, like, you know, you talk to students about as well. Like, you know, this is where we are. This is our country, and
Absolutely.
this is real. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, and so you don't have the luxury of doing everything you see on TikTok.
Yeah.
Because the consequences for you are always going to be different.
Absolutely.
And that's just real. You know, and even when their parents are suggesting something different, I mean, there's your parents, like, you know, I certainly would never suggest, like, I know more than them where you're concerned, but I'm just telling you the life and the reality that I've lived. This is what I see, this is what I've seen, and I think that's what I'm going to continue to see, just based on who we are as a society and our country, the nature of our country.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate that is a reality, and our country has come so far.
Yeah.
We can't discount that, but at the same time, there are some realities that we also can't ignore.
That's it.
And therefore, there's some messaging that we have to pass down.
Right.
And I think the cultural relevance of attending a HBCU and the scenarios and stories and what they're able to impart in you, because it's a lived experience for 98% of the staff, if not more than that.
Yep.
And because you really feel like they're pouring into your future from a sincere place, they're passionate about your success, you're much more likely to buy into what they're selling.
Right.
Because they haven't steered you wrong yet.
Exactly.
So why would they steer me wrong?
Right.
Moving forward.
Right.
That's good stuff. All right, Dr. Logan, let's talk a little bit about, or let's talk more about your experience as a transformational leader.
Yes, sir.
Let's think about when you came to Hillside in 2012. You were already a successful principal at New Tech High School, and you were taking over a school that was less than 70% graduation cohort rate. The state was threatening to take over because of historically low performing test data. Reputation in the community had dissolved in a lot of respects. And then they tap you.
The reality is, I was asked probably 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And those 3 times I said, no, I'm good.
Wow.
You know, and it was around December of 2011, you know, where I was asked again. And I thought about it. I said, you know, that time I thought, prayed, and it immediately came to me, and I was like, you know, that's not going to be fair to those kids.
Yeah.
For them to have to go and find somebody who's not familiar with the school, who's not familiar with the culture, the challenges, Like, yeah. And all I could think about were, the students, like, what's good for them. And they weren't even my students then.
Mm-hmm.
And what was also tugging at me was like having to give up, all that we had created.
What you had built, literally built.
At Hillside New Tech. And that was a large part of the reason why I kept saying no, because I didn't know how we were going to process that. And the conversation initially was, well, we'll merge the two. Because they had done the same thing at Southern School of Engineering, if I remember correctly.
Yep, where I taught.
Yeah, and so they were going to bring the two back together and leave it as an academy. So that didn't happen for whatever reasons, and that was clearly above my pay grade. But again, like I said, it was largely about the kids. And when I got there, I used to always say, like, boy, the worst thing that could ever happen to you is, or just to anybody, is to have to start school in the middle of the year as a teacher, as a principal, as anything. And lo and behold,
especially turnaround.
I started in February of 2012. But I tell folk all of the time, it's probably the best thing that happened in that regard, because it gave me an opportunity to see and just watch. Couldn't do too much.
At that point, nobody expecting you to do much.
Right. And the one thing I did change was, of course, the lunch dynamic. I think they had a smart lunch, and
lunch was crazy.
Fights every day.
Lunch was crazy.
Fights and
I never forget my first day at the school as an assistant principal, because I started the same year that you came. My first assistant principalship, and my wife came to the school. The first time she came to the school, she walked in, girl fight, middle of the lobby, the grand lobby, and she like, oh, I'll never come back to that school again. I'm telling you, and I'm talking to the camera now. When I say this man took over a situation that I don't wish on anybody. First week there, I told my wife I won't make it to December. I've never seen nothing like this.
Yeah, that December marker is always because there was a point in my career as an AP at Hillside where I told somebody, I was like, yeah, I ain't coming back here after December. Once the principal who brought me there had left. But yeah, man, it was something to see. But what I saw was a lot of indifference. And a lot of folk had not necessarily given up, but I think they just felt lost.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was about really trying to figure out who was here for the kids. And so by the time that school year had officially ended, in the summer of 2012, I'm almost certain we probably had 42 positions posted on the district's website, from administration all the way down to our custodians. And I was like, yeah, y'all got to go.
Yeah.
Because I'll figure this out.
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure this out. And we had every position filled. And you were there with me.
Yeah.
Where we interviewed on Sundays, we interviewed at Starbucks, we interviewed at Barnes and Nobles, at the school. We didn't have Zoom and Skype and that. I think we had Skype for people who might have been out of state, but we were just aggressive.
It wasn't what it is now, though.
Right. No. And this is very concerning where we are now. But, we definitely back then had more apples to choose from.
Absolutely.
And through that process, I think it certainly made all of the difference in terms of being able to get such a large chunk of the faculty who are now new to buy into what we were then doing in an effort to move the school forward. And, even some of the changes we made in that spring, like we saw some significant gains instructionally.
Absolutely.
With some of the things that we put in place just that spring. And that was largely just, supervision of instruction.
Yep.
But
and expectations.
Expectations. Like, I'm there every day. I expect everybody to be there every day.
Yep.
I'm pulling in the long hours. I expect folk to pull in the long hours if that's necessary.
If you got a duty post, make sure you're on your duty post.
Your duty post. Like, this is, again, that goes back to the professionalism thing. Like, I'm not telling you something 4 and 5 times. Like, you're an adult. The kids are counting on you to be in place. I'm counting on you to be in place. in an effort to make sure that, we operate effectively and efficiently, and making sure that safety is prioritized.
So many of our issues, fights, things like that, literally were people not being in place.
That's it. That's it, man.
People not being in place. And kids going to find the blind spot.
That's it. They look for the blind spot.
They look for the blind spot.
And I tell my team, even until today, supervision, safety, and security is your number one responsibility. Your number one. Because in the absence of that, there is no curriculum and instruction. There can't be. It's kind of like classroom management.
Yeah.
For administrators, you have to make sure that you have set up efficient, as best you can, and effective systems to make sure that we operate orderly and safely.
Along those same lines, you go from less than 70% graduation cohort rate to, by year 4, from 2012 to 2015, graduating class, over $12 million in scholarships, over 90% graduation cohort rate. And I think the best thing that I remember about that class was they got $12.5 million in scholarships. They were upset because their goal was $15 million.
Right, exactly.
How do you go from a school about to be shut down to that in literally 4 years? But if we think about it, it was less than 4 years, and sustain that growth and continue to grow.
Immediately what I saw once I understood the process being at New Tech. But of course, at New Tech, I only had like 400 students. And so the senior class was like 110 kids. But I understood how we were the first or the only school that year in the Triangle to have a 100% graduation rate in 2011. I understood how the process worked. And when I came to Hillside, what I found out immediately is like most people didn't understand how the graduation cohort worked. So it was about firstly educating folk about why we do what we do and why so many things were important. And the reality of the thing was helping people to make connections between the work of the registrar, the data manager, the counselors, and making sure that you all have to stay on the same page.
Communication guide.
Communication, like if a student stops coming to school and a teacher knows that they went to another school, then we got to get with that other school to get documentation that that student actually, went to that school or whatever the case may be. And so you had people just transferring, not requesting transcripts, not filling out
no documentation
forms, no documentation, nothing. And
I think that happens more often than we think.
Exactly.
At schools, and we wonder what happened to the kids.
Exactly.
And why the numbers look like the numbers are. And we can control a lot of it.
And we can control a lot of it. And so you try to put in the best systems possible to manage that. And ultimately, because you can always take care of the kids who are in the building, right? You know who's in the building. It's the kids who have left the building that started the 9th grade with the kids who are in the senior class or whatever the case may be. And so, again, if we're managing the numbers inside the building and we're keeping a track of them, like that's also important, because we had a lot of students who were still in the 10th grade that should have been seniors or in the 9th grade and should have been a senior, and they had the credits to be a junior, and nobody was counting the credits, nobody was promoting the students. So there was a whole lot of like stuff that just wasn't systematized. Yeah. And so putting in those processes and procedures is what elevated our work and accelerated our work when it was all said and done.
Again, routines, processes,
That's it.
inspection.
And everybody knows, people who know me knows I'm a big picture guy, and I have to surround myself with people who can attend to the details. And I've been fortunate in that regard because I've had so many administrators and folk on our instructional support team that can do that. Yeah. And so when they attend to those details, that's where those systems are strengthened, because we get an opportunity to reflect on those systems to see, where the gaps are. How do we fill those gaps? How do we make this better when it's all said and done? And because if you don't, you'll reach a plateau. Yeah. Or you'll go, start to regress.
Once you plateau, you start regressing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just those systems, man. But more importantly, or most importantly, creating a culture of a healthy culture. Let's just start there. A culture that puts the students first. Yeah. A culture that recognizes the faculty and staff and their talents and their
Talk about that.
contributions.
What are the steps to doing that? Because I think we talk a lot about culture and education, and you have to establish culture. And I tell people, once you get the culture right, that's going to net you 10 points.
Right.
Proficiency.
Exactly.
Quick. But
You
that's
know,
easier said than done.
and it's crazy because when I got there, of course, you know, we had a transformational or school transformation team that worked with us from the Department of
Right.
Instruction here in North Carolina. And so one of the things that they tell you to attack first is culture. And so if you remember, you probably remember when I first got there in 2012, we would do the superintendent's honor roll celebration. So for me, I don't ever like doing things tacky.
Yep.
I don't like doing things where it looks like I just threw this together. And so the superintendent's honor roll recognized students who had earned all A's during the school year. And so that year, I think we took a limousine.
Yep, I remember
because
that.
we only had out of the 1,300 kids there were probably only 4 to 6
Yep.
kids that had made all A's during the school year. Recognizing this academic culture.
Being intentional about it.
Being intentional about it.
Because other kids see that.
And other kids see it. It's kind of like the scholarship piece, you know. We would, every Sunday, once we start the scholarship season and the college acceptance season, even the military commitments now, on our Sunday message, I would always include the names of those students. And so we've gotten to the point now where parents will email me, like, you didn't call my child's name.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, I got it on my list. It's not, they're not in the queue yet,
Yeah.
you know, because the list, thank God, is long
Yeah.
of students who I have to recognize. But like this past school year, this graduating
They're waiting for
class-
you to mess up.
Yes, sir. But that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. That's the culture you
Yeah,
want.
because they're listening to the messages, just like I would put on there every time I send a message on Sunday, there's a food for thought. And it's something that's usually designed to inspire, to invoke reflective thought, just something that relates to the educational experience that I want them to have in our school community, not just the students, but the faculty, the parents, you know. And again, I'm always amazed when I go to athletic events and community events, and parents are like, I so miss your, you know, my child has graduated, we miss your food for thought. Like, we used to just wait for that. And those small things, man.
Small things go a
they
long way.
They go a long way, and they make the most difference, man.
Absolutely.
You know, we would do the, people are like, well, why wouldn't it have been done anyway? Like the honor roll list. The list would just be a list of names and, you know, third quarter honor roll. So we started laminating and decorating, or not decorating, but designing the banners in such a way where, again, it looked like somebody was intentional, about recognizing the students. And so you go now and you see students, you know, they'll point to their names or take pictures with their names and post it on social media. You know, they're on the honor roll. That's the environment that you want.
That's what you want. Because their friends see that, who may not be on that list.
Yep.
And now it's a healthy jealousy potentially.
That's
I'm
it.
happy for you, but I'm mad I'm not up there.
now.
I got to get up
Those
there.
are the kinds of conversations that you hear our students have. Like, you know, I was 1 grade short, you
Yep.
know, or Doc, can I do this assignment?
Yep.
Like, can you ask this teacher to do this assignment? Let me redo this assignment.
And
so
it's
I can
about
go on the
effort.
AD. That's it.
So many kids, especially from communities of color,
Yeah,
it's not that they can't do the work. They're not interested.
that's it.
They're not interested.
Right.
And they're not in an environment that has cultivated them to be interested.
Right.
But when
Right.
we can tap into their interests and get them excited about the learning, they've proven time and time again, they can do the work.
They can do the work. And it's like I tell people all of the time, it's like, you know, I look at pass rates or the number of students who are proficient, specifically black students, across the state for Math 1, for example. And it's like historically they've been low. And I've just gotten to this space now where I'm of the belief, like, we need to really examine the curriculum.
Yeah.
You know, is this the most effective curriculum? Is this the most impactful curriculum where our black children are concerned? And if we don't give attention to it and have these conversations, they're going to continue to suffer, because just like you mentioned, when they're interested, they'll rise to the occasion. When you're consistently told you're a failure, that only dampens your morale.
And you check out.
And you check out. And so we have to be cognizant of that. It's the same effect that it has on teachers in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm putting in all of this effort and, I come out and I have a situation where none of my kids are proficient.
It's demoralizing.
It's demoralizing. And I really believe that we have to have this conversation about, is this the most effective curriculum? And while there's value and merit in Common Core standards, there's a lot of missteps in its implementation that have left teachers and students with the short end of the stick.
I still wonder what was wrong with the way we did math when we changed everything anyway.
And what people don't realize, what people do realize, because I think a lot of this is intentional, but that's another story. Colleges and universities, they're teaching math traditionally.
Exactly.
And so
it's not aligned. There's no vertical alignment.
Right.
From the high schools, and then our kids get there and you tell us that they're not prepared.
That part. And now you generate reports to further demonize high schools, especially, that you have so many kids needing to take remedial math coming from your school. And again, but that's not how you taught them. And that's not what's happening at the collegiate level. And in many instances, it's so lecture-based. And again, like I said, there's so many dynamics that come
especially
into
the
play.
bigger universities you go to.
Exactly. But again, I think we have to be champions for, black and brown children. Because I don't even want to say they're underachieving. Especially those students I know that are giving it their all. I can't in my heart of hearts.
I think that's why the growth score matters so much.
Yeah.
Because if we're ever going to truly make this thing equitable, it's not equitable when we look at 80% versus 20% when you think about proficiency to growth. When what we should be doing is growing all children.
That is the meaning of learning.
That's the meaning of learning.
Growth, growing. And this is the thing that we ignore in the calculation that determines so many things in so many settings. Because depending on where you are, it could determine if your school gets to open. As a principal, it gets to determine if you are retained, depending on how your supervisors want to treat the scores, But again, I'm just of the mindset we really need to examine this curriculum.
Well, I think it's also something to think about when we think about equity. There's so much conversation about equity. And I think in black and brown communities, absolutely there's some accountability that needs to be held for expectations, for just like we're not letting anyone off the hook.
Right.
But at the same time, I think it's also important that we reward and celebrate students from those communities or our communities that are putting in the work.
Right.
And may not be proficient according to certain metrics, but are showing sizable growth.
Right.
But we essentially are rewarding proficiency and minimizing growth when we know in other communities, so oftentimes the kids come proficient.
That part.
And so,
and a lot of times they don't grow.
And a lot of times they don't grow.
But your proficiency is such where there's not a conversation because your proficiency is 80, 90%, 70%, but you have no growth.
You have no growth.
And then you have our situation where there's a lot of growth, but not a lot of proficiency.
Not a lot of proficiency.
But we celebrate it. I can't wait for the powers that be.
And that goes back to culture.
Yeah.
What are we celebrating in our culture? Absolutely, we want to push our kids to be proficient.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We want them to get those scores. But at the same time, we also are going to reward them for the growth that they make.
Right. And yeah, I just had a conversation with someone about, EVA scores and that kind of stuff, and projected scores or versus predicted scores or expected scores, and projected scores weren't really what we thought they were. And I'm like, yeah, this is another time for us to come together to make sure that we're all on the same page and we all have the same understanding about what it is that we're looking at and how we're using this information. But again, it all impacted the work we were doing around school transformation, because again, it would not have done any of us any good to go in and hammer kids over the head, when they were giving us the best that they had, or when they give us the best that they have at that time. But I know several students who have not demonstrated proficiency on an EOC, and they go into college and graduate with honors
and do just fine.
Yeah. You're talking about a moment, a snapshot, and that snapshot for all of those students that take that test, if you allow it to, it will define the school, when there are so many other things and so many other measures that can be used to measure a school's effectiveness or a school's success, if you have. So
when you think about that point, especially being over 70% free and reduced lunch, we know the communities that the kids are coming from. We know that the biggest chunk of their day a lot of times is at the school.
Right.
The safest part of their day is at the school for many of them. When we talk about college and career readiness, what does that mean? Because it's a catchphrase for everyone now, and I think it means different things to different people.
Right.
What does college and career readiness mean, especially for the communities of color that you serve, where if we don't find solutions before they leave 12th grade, make sure they make it to 12th grade, we already know how the book probably is going to end for them.
Right.
So how do we circumnavigate that? Or what do you do to make sure, first, we get them to where they need to be in high school and graduating, and then preparing them for college and career readiness, and equipping them with the skills they can be so they can be successful beyond?
I think to answer your question initially, what is college and career readiness? You have your technical definition, which speaks to test scores and how students score. If you're a level 3 in high school, you're grade level ready. It's only until you're a 4 or 5 where you're college and career ready. Same thing, if you don't score a 19 on the ACT, you're not college ready. So there's that technical side of it. The real side of it is, if you're really going to do the work to make sure that students are college and career ready, you're trying to be intentional about, firstly, the career awareness aspect, and making sure that students have opportunities to engage in career awareness activities. Same thing if it's career exploration, if it's internships. Again, I like the idea of connecting our students to these really unique internship opportunities.
We know Hillside has a bank. I think the only bank in a high school in North Carolina.
Exactly, and it's a student-ran
bank.
Where they're the tellers, the manager, the branch manager, and they're the ones in there taking your money. They're the ones in there adding up all of the money at the end of the day to be, deposited and that kind of stuff. So creating those kinds of experiences.
Talk about career readiness.
Yeah, that's ultimately as a matter of fact, and I went to the credit union last week. One of the customer service reps asked me if I knew of anybody at our school's bank who was looking for a summer job.
Wow.
So it's the word is out there because our students have done that kind of work. And
absolutely.
Some of them have gone on to college and worked at banks.
Absolutely.
While they were in college or during the summers to make extra money and that kind of stuff. And so again, connecting our students to those kinds of opportunities is really what college and career readiness is, and it's really about career readiness. The college readiness piece is all about academics, but a lot of them who don't aspire to go to college is because they don't really know what careers are out there. And
that's good.
When they realize if you don't do more with career exploration and career awareness, they're gonna continue to have the same mindset that they have, where they're just indifferent because they don't know any better. It's not because they're not motivated. I don't know.
Exposure.
So, you can't aspire to something that you never really have seen before.
That's big.
Yeah. And so that's why we're really intentional about having Eli Lilly come in and do work with our students.
Okay.
Toshiba come in and do work with our students. KPMG, I think it's an accounting agency or accounting firm that works with our Business and Finance Academy. We are trying to create avenues where students can go and shadow people to learn more about different careers. We've actually allowed students to participate in field trip to learn more about, go to the beach, go to the Wilmington and go to the beach to learn more about marine biologists and the work that they do, or environmentalists that actually work out at the beach, where you're connecting your love for the beach with your profession, because we forget about that too. Like teaching students, we talk about, money, but there's also something to be said about happiness. As my mantra is, like, if you do what you love, the money will come.
Yeah.
It'll take care of itself.
Absolutely.
But this year, our faculty has committed itself as a part of our school improvement work, is all of our teachers owning the whole idea of career readiness through the work that they do in the classes. Because it can't just be the counselors. It can't be just the career development coordinator. It's too big. There's too many kids. And so we have to divvy it up. And so we have to just rethink how we use the time that we have. And so right now, I'm just in the process of actually trying to carve out time in our schedule to create time so that we can have more of these experiences for our students, so that they're able to make connections between what they're doing in the classroom with what they potentially aspire to do, so they can see and understand that there is value in me taking classes at Durham Tech, because I understand that if I decide to be, an HVAC technician, I have the potential as an 18-year-old to come out making, $70,000, $80,000 a year.
And we've got away from that career and technical education. And there has to be a real conversation about bringing that back holistically and not leaving that lift all to the schools individually to figure it out.
I think to me, it's just about willpower and imagination, and education needs to be overhauled. Completely. Like, we've been doing the same thing, essentially the same way, calling it different things.
Yeah.
We just have to have a greater imagination and be more resolved about what it is that we want for our communities. And so, like, one of the things that has always kept me here at Hillside in particular is the potential. But if we don't ever put that potential to use, it's all for naught. And we have to start thinking, especially in the face of teacher shortages, we have to start thinking really creatively about how we educate students, but more importantly, how we educate them to become productive citizens.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why you see a lot of disengagement amongst young people, because they just don't see the value added.
Yeah.
I had a student, I went out to lunch with a former student last week, and he was talking about his experience taking math. He's like, I knew math. He's like, I would put my head up, and if I understood, what was happening, I would just put my head back down and go to sleep, because I just always understood math, and I would always get A's on my on my assignments, but I never understood, like, what did pre-cal or calculus have to do. Yeah. He's like, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. And so, of course, as an administrator, I'm telling him, like, it's, it teaches you how to think logically, like, how to problem solve. Like, that's really what you're doing.
The steps.
Yeah. How to think procedurally. Like, everything isn't always about the content. But to teachers' credit, we put a lot of the onus on making the curriculum relevant on teachers, but they also need time to do that.
Yeah.
And so we need to look at a model where perhaps we're at a space now where teachers do need to be working 12 months to justify a significant bump in salary.
I just said that to somebody.
Yeah, and it's not those summer months are spent with students, but it's spent developing themselves professionally.
We can put some expectations on it, but give them that think time.
Give them the think time. Like, it's needed. It's needed, because you want me to do interventions, you want me to do social and emotional learning, you want me to do content delivery, you want me to do whatever nurses are supposed to do in the nursing there. You want me to discipline students and create these structured learning environments.
Parent, counsel.
You can't keep asking people for all of these things with no adjustments in some of the things that they're already doing, you know, before burnout is achieved.
Yep. Which is what we're seeing.
Which is what we're seeing. And this new generation of in the workforce, like, this is a different breed.
They're not going for it.
At all.
They're not going for it.
As I shared with somebody today before I got here, I was like, I'm just interested in figuring out, like, how you, there's a candidate we were interviewing, and she's like, yeah, I just left, like, in the middle of the year. And I was like, I'm just more interested, like, how did you do it? Like,
yeah.
And how did you, like, not freak out?
Yeah.
You know, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm running with anxiety, thinking, like, well, I'm going to pay my bills.
Yeah.
Like, you know, blah, 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 blah,
Not
blah.
that deep for them.
Yeah. I was like, yeah.
Or the new thing is they call it quiet quitting.
Right.
I'm on the job, but I'm not on the job.
But I'm not on the job. Right.
For months. Unproductive.
Right.
I tell my teachers, work while you work. You
Right.
know? Don't just be here on Facebook or playing on your phone or just chilling, shopping.
Yeah.
Work while you work. But now, like, that quiet quitting is a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I'm going to stay here until I figure out my next move, but I'm not going all in while I'm here.
That's it.
If I just don't walk away and just forget it, I'll figure it out when I figure it out.
And that's what you don't want to happen, which is why you have to be really attentive to the needs of your faculty. And by no stretch of the imagination would I ever suggest, like, I'm the master of it, but I try to make sure that my team supports me in making sure that we're meeting the needs and that you have built relationships with the departments that you supervise, as department chairs, as administrators, because I know I can't be everything to everybody, and we have other members of the team that can help me carry that weight, so that there is not that phenomenon of quiet quitting or checking out, or just making sure that we keep our fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the school, in an effort to make sure that students are, you know, being properly educated when it's all said and done.
Another challenging element, parents.
Yeah.
So oftentimes it's not the kids that run people away, it's the parents.
Right.
And I don't think the parents, they're not getting better. And that's for good or bad. You know, they're more involved than ever in some cases, and they're less involved in some cases than ever. And Cornel West had a quote: "You can't lead the people if you don't love the people. You can't save the people if you don't serve the people." We often as educators say we love all our kids, but I know for a lot of educators we can't stand some of our parents. How do you maneuver tough or disgruntled or helicopter parents that can seemingly hold your school hostage at times and potentially run away quality teachers and staff, just cause major headaches for you, whether that's going to the school board or central office or whatever the case? How do you continue to manage them in a school that's so large?
Yeah. What I always share with my faculty is the idea of, you deal with the facts. You don't ever step into an emotional arena with anybody, because you will lose, because everybody's entitled to their feelings. But when we're dealing with artifacts, hard evidence, it is what it is.
So make sure you're collecting it first.
So make sure you're collecting it, because I'm not sitting in a meeting with you, and you hemming and hawing about, what it is that we're talking about. I'm not going to, in most instances, if there's a situation where a parent contacts me and they're suggesting, the teacher just don't like my son, or the teacher doesn't like my child, I'm like, I'm not even going to bring a meeting together for that purpose, because I'll check on the situation and apprise you of what I find. But in my mind, like, that's only discouraging to the teachers. Now, if you have a situation where you're talking about, your child's grades, was it graded fairly? We can definitely do
Absolutely.
that. Because I've already instructed the team on my expectations about how we approach grading.
What that process should look like.
What that process is, so that we're dealing with those things. Was there a misstep in the process? Was there a misstep in the calculation? Those are things that are hard evidence in my mind. But once you start getting into the space where I got this grade and it looks like it was given subjectively, because there is no rubric,
it's a problem.
Anything, it's a problem. It's a problem. So you put yourself in a situation where again, we're in this emotional arena now, and you're not going to win because, again, people are entitled to their feelings.
Yep.
I can't tell you or make you feel a certain way. You're entitled to how you feel. And so that's always been that has always been my approach to dealing with everybody for the most part.
Leave emotion out of it, deal with the facts.
Yeah, I understand and I appreciate how you feel, because again, our feelings are our feelings, and I'm going to create space to honor that. But in the same breath, if we're going to effectively problem solve, let's deal with the problem. Let's make sure that there is a problem, firstly.
Yep.
And then if there is one, let's, work our way to finding a solution versus this whole idea. Because, it's not like how it was when I grew up, or probably when you grew up, where, parents told you, don't have those people calling me.
Yep.
Don't have nobody call me from your school. Blah, 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 blah.
The school
blah.
right first.
And the school was always right.
Yeah.
You're a child. This is a different generation. So I'm always amazed at, how adults or parents take the word like as bond.
Yeah.
At a minimum, come hear the other version. Come hear the other side.
Before you draw conclusions. But this is where we are as a society. We got to deal with it.
And you see it on social media all of the time where people post stuff and everybody chimes in and you haven't even given the other party a chance to respond. But, everybody's the judge, jury, and wants to render a verdict without hearing the other party's side. But again, like I said, you just learn to dismiss it and keep it pushing. Because at the end of the day, you just want to focus on making sure that you're doing what's in the best interest of your faculty and your students. And again, I'm always rely on that, focus on the facts.
Focus on the facts. You talked about artifacts, you talk about grading, you talked about rubrics. That gets into instructional leadership. And I always say I learned to be, you modeled for me what instructional leadership looked like. And I really stamped that and have tried to take that with me everywhere that I've gone ever since as a principal. So let's get into instructional leadership. What is instructional leadership to you?
I think it's, instructional leadership is really, from a principal's perspective, just being familiar with your instructional expectations and making sure that those instructional expectations are actually being implemented on a daily basis, right? It doesn't do any of us any good for me to launch professional development at the beginning of the year and to monitor or to continue it throughout the year if I'm not going to inspect what I expect. And so that's where the leadership comes into play, where we're actually checking to make sure that the agreements that we've made as a faculty around instruction, those things are happening, so that we don't have to go back to the whole idea of these parent conferences. And not just for that reason, we want to make sure that our students are learning at optimal levels, right? But when we're not in there doing walkthrough observations, this past school year, my administrative intern launched learning walks, where she had teachers during their planning period go in and visit classes of their colleagues. And it was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences for teachers and helping them to understand some of the things that we're trying to
Why we do what we do.
Yeah, man.
You see how your colleagues look.
Right. Right. Exactly. And then it also gives you a chance to see how your colleagues look who are doing it well.
Exactly.
In comparison to how you're doing
exactly.
it. Because these are the same kids that leave this space and come into your space, and then they're off the chain. But they're only doing it in this space. So there's a connection there about something you're doing or not doing, and we want you to figure out what high performing teachers are doing that won't allow students to behave in the way that they're behaving in your class, or performing in the way that they do in your class, which may be underperforming, by just modeling the work of higher performing teachers. But again, it all goes back to systems. As I share with my APs, when you don't do walkthrough observations, for example, you really diminish the integrity of our instructional learning model, because you said there are other things that are more important than teaching and learning. Now, if you're dealing with a safety and security matter,
that's priority. We get it. But after
that's
that,
not the case. Yeah, we don't have
teaching and learning is our priority. That's what we're here for.
That's right. And if you don't have these emergencies every day,
Yeah.
right? So
And if we do, we got another problem.
we got another problem. We got another problem. So it all goes back to the systems, like, making sure that we monitor the systems. But again, where instructional leadership is concerned, a lot of people shy away when I talk to APs, especially as I go through interviews. Like, so what do you believe was your area of strength? And you then automatically go back to, their content, the content that they taught. And so as a principal, it's my responsibility to make sure that I help APs understand you won't know all of the content, but you must know good pedagogy, impactful pedagogy. Because if you don't, then you add no value to the learning community as far as instructional leadership is concerned. But that also speaks to cultural leadership, human resource leadership. Those 10-minute walkthroughs, as trivial as they may seem, they are impactful in so many aspects. And if you attend to it well by, properly recording or documenting what you saw, asking those reflective questions, providing the feedback to the teacher. And like I said, sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone and don't just do the email. Stop by and have the conversation. Personalize it.
Absolutely.
But we can't get so busy and stuff.
Don't be busy, be productive.
Don't be busy, be productive.
There's a lot of busy people not getting nothing done.
Not getting anything done that's relevant to the goals, the mission, the vision, the core values. See, we state these things in education and then we jump into doing something else. We have to be more intentional about realizing, making sure that what we do every day helps us to realize all of these agreements that we've made through our school improvement plan.
How do you get administrators, assistant principals to be confident in pedagogy and going into classrooms? I was a social studies teacher and I have to coach or monitor a physics teacher. And I'm terrible at science and math. How do you groom and coach your administrators to be confident in these areas, to be able to add value?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I do is we begin the school year by calibrating expectations. And so we all do walkthrough observations together. And so we go and do the observation, write down our notes, and then come back, and then we have a conversation about what we observed. What kinds of questions would be posed to the teacher based on our observations. And so it helps to normalize the walkthrough experience for the teachers, most importantly. Because what you'll find is some people, their strength is to be nitpicky. Some people, their strength is to always see the good. Some people's strength is, to go in there and to look for something that's wrong, to have something constructive or critical to say. And doing these calibrated walkthrough observations, it helps to mitigate that as much as possible by, like I said, by just normalizing the experience. But then we take it a step further, and sometimes I afford the APs that, hey, if you want me to do this with you individually, we can do this individually. If you still feel uncertain, and so some of the APs have, requested that. We've also added a step in there where we use a Google form to chart our walkthrough observations, but then we take the qualitative data in such a way where at the end of every month we do an analysis to see how many walkthroughs were done, who did the most, who did the least, and as a team we offer explanations, because at the end of the day it's transparency and holding everybody accountable. When it's all said and done. And I had one of my APs tell me, he's like, yeah, when you started doing that, I had to step my game up because I didn't want to be the last one on the list. But then you also run into am I just making sure that I get my numbers up, or are you providing quality feedback? And so this coming school year now, I'm gonna have to pay attention to the feedback, because what I also notice on formal observations is in the space where we could provide feedback, sometimes they don't put any feedback. And so that's not good in my mind. I always provide feedback after I rate a teacher, especially if you're suggesting that they're developing or accomplished and above.
Why? Why are you accomplished?
Like, why?
Because that shouldn't be easy to come by.
And it shouldn't be, you know. And then
Or
you need to
distinguish.
Yeah, you need to explain
That shouldn't be easy
me.
to come by. Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm not seeing it.
Right, right. As the principal, and I haven't seen it. Like, how did you get it?
Because now when I go in and you proficient, and previously you were distinguished,
Exactly.
there's a gap there.
Yeah, big gap.
Either I'm off or you off.
Right, right. And I certainly pride myself on the feedback that I do provide everybody in the building, because I try to encapsulate as much as I can based on what I observed in that moment, and helping them to see, helping the teacher to see, or helping the employee to see, you know, their areas of strength that they can build on. Because oftentimes we focus on, you know, weaknesses, and you know, you need to fix these weaknesses. Well, that might not be my, you know, area, you know, and so it sometimes is advantageous for us to say, you know, I see you this could be a strength for you using technology in the classroom. Let's build on this.
Yeah.
Versus, you did a poor job with classroom talk, or, you know, student dialogue. You know, you didn't facilitate that well. That might not be your area of strength. It wasn't a make or break situation, so there's no need for me to belabor the conversation with, you know, how you can make this better. Let's focus on what you did well and how to make that better to compensate for this, because you may not want to go back into this space.
Yeah,
because this is not your thing.
Yeah.
And it's just one tool in your kit of many tools. So focus on this other
Lean
tool.
into what you're good at.
Yeah.
Lean into what you're good at. The Department of Public Instruction has published information that 50% of teachers leave the profession within 5 years. Everybody's grappling with hiring, sustaining. What are you doing to overcome this statistic and keeping teachers, especially the good ones? But also, what are you doing to recruit the best and brightest to your school?
One of the things, as far as recruitment is concerned, people underestimate the power of social media and keeping up with the website. Because what I found over the years is, in sitting in interviews, people always reference what they saw. So I saw on your website, blah 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 blah, or I saw on your Facebook page.
I always
blah,
see
blah,
the
blah,
Facebook.
blah. And I was like, okay, so
That
let me make
inspires.
sure that,
Yeah, the highlights.
yeah, it intrigues people in such a way where it piques their interest.
Yeah.
And so they want to see, and they want to
Again, intentional.
Yeah, they want to see more. They want to actually see it in action. And so those tools have become so valuable in helping us to recruit teachers, to recruit employees in general. They just want to know. I think our school's history and its legacy in the community is another reason why we're able to recruit teachers to our school, just employees in general. We have quite a few of our former students, or, you know, my colleagues who are alumni of the school, who want to come back and give back and contribute to the school based on their experiences at the school as well. Again, as far as recruitment is concerned, trying to work hand in hand with human resources as best we can, with the understanding that, you know, they're limited in their capacity. And so for me, it's just about making sure that I report to them, like, hey, if there's a glitch in the application system, or if the system is down, or, you know, if they could forward me anything that they found, because they have other schools and other departments to serve as well. So I get that, and we can't lean but so hard on human resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that has always been the case since I've been here in DPS. And for me, it's not a problem, because you have to be aggressive in your recruitment. You know, there are 51 other schools who we're competing against, depending on the position it is. So it always behooves us to make sure that we properly position ourselves in such a way where we make ourselves look attractive. And then we do some innovative things to keep teachers in-house. This past school year, we did some innovative things with our inclusion teachers, where we worked with the idea of having some of them be case managers and some of them be classroom teachers, splitting the inclusion teachers up.
Okay.
So that everybody isn't focused on everything and doing it to the best of their abilities, but it's only so much you can do when you have to be the case manager, collecting data, instructing students, it diminishes your effectiveness.
Absolutely.
You're doing the job literally of 2.5 people in my mind. And so we created a scenario where we had a couple of teachers that all they did was case management, IEPs, MDRs. That was their thing. They checked in with students on a bi-weekly basis. They met with the classroom teachers who had the responsibility of co-teaching, meeting with parents as well, participating in IEP meetings with the case managers, collecting the data, making sure that the data is uploaded to ECATs, and for the first year, like, it's worked well, and of course there are glitches and things that
absolutely, yeah, always.
But getting their feedback was vital to the success of the model.
So still collaboration. It's not a top down, this is what you're gonna do.
It's so dependent on collaboration. That's the only way we could do it. It makes you come out of your comfort zone to talk to people about the students that we're serving and trying to get to move forward. Because
we are working together.
That's it.
To try to solve these problems. All right, so let's get into this last part. All right, there are a lot of things affecting and impacting education in America right now. What do you think are some of the biggest issues that are plaguing the American education system?
I really think, man, it's so many things. I think looking at it through the lens of a principal, I think one of the things that we just need to focus on is the system itself. And as I previously mentioned, this whole idea of like just overhauling the system. I don't think the school calendar is responsive to the needs of the students in our society. We know what the research says about summer lag, and the fact that we spend so much time at the beginning of each school year, remediating, catching up, and that kind of stuff. So we know that the design of the calendar, it doesn't work. Again, going back to the curriculum piece, we hear the talk about the whole idea of curriculum being culturally responsive when it isn't. Like, it's good that people put it out and you see a lot of vendors touting their wares, but it's bigger than the stuff. It's about the professional development. It's about, if you're really going to honor what it means to be culturally responsive, it's about the professional development. And sometimes in many instances the school doesn't always have the capacity to do that work. And then going back to professional development, there's a significant lack, and so many people will always suggest like there's something wrong with your culture when your turnover rate is such and such and such and such. Well, there could be something toxic about a school's culture. I'm not suggesting that doesn't happen, but to me that's beginning with the whole idea like there's something inherently wrong with leadership, versus let's begin with listening to leadership and focusing on professional development, for example. Because again, when you think about integrated math, Common Core, we're still doing this, and there was a push when these things first rolled out for professional development, but that's been quite a while ago now. But there's no professional development around it.
And you got new teachers coming out every year. And
God forbid we talk about people who are coming into the profession through an alternative licensure program, and they've had no exposure to educational pedagogy and that kind of stuff. They do have the short end of the stick, and so it just should force us to really think about how we design education, because in my mind there's so many things that can be accomplished even through our like grade levels. Like, why I don't think we need grade levels anymore. Students should be able to matriculate through school based on their ability to master standards. If you've demonstrated mastery, you might be socially out of place or whatever the case may be, but I'd rather you be socially out of place and we mitigate that through interventions versus me holding you back.
We stifle your growth.
Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of our black and brown students. And then we have to think about our assessment culture, especially at the high school level. There are times where you can't even like unpack or just reflect on the testing experience you just had before there's another test to be administered.
Yep.
And I know the state has tried to reduce testing, but again, the testing that still exists, I think it could be done differently. Mm-hmm. We know students have much shorter attention spans due to their engagement with social media, just our society
the culture
in general. Yeah. And so to ask a student to sit for 4 hours to take any assessment is asking a lot when we know that is counterproductive to their everyday experience. And so in my mind, it would seem to me like we would assess you after each unit that you've covered in a course.
Yeah.
And your mastery of that unit, and then we'll take your performance over across these 5 units, 6 units, 7 units to determine your proficiency for the course. Mm-hmm. That's an option. Mm-hmm. Again,
be creative.
Be creative. Be responsive to the needs versus this whole idea that we're being locked in or that we're locked in based on policy and legislation and that kind of stuff. It's unfortunate. And it's very unfortunate for so many of our students who struggle, regardless of their race. Those who struggle, and a lot of times it's not because they can't do it. There's just no motivation to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think if we created a more responsive educational system, we could capture and recapture a whole lot of those kids.
Being a high school administrator, I believe your whole career, well, high school teacher / administrator, do you think the traditional model is broken of, you think about Hillside, 1,400, 1,500 kids. Do you think that model is still effective, or do we need to start considering a smaller high school community where we can be more hands-on in our approach, potentially more hands-on in our approach, versus trying to operate a small city in some cases?
Right. I think, the research is definitely out there that will say, trying to create smaller learning communities within the school has value. And coming from Hillside New Tech, which was a smaller learning community, it certainly added a lot of value to the total educational experience in my mind. And so I think that's a part of it. That could definitely be a part of it. But I also think, why not create a scenario where your juniors and seniors are at a community college? That gives you more opportunity and time to actually help the students who need the most.
That condenses the size of the school.
It condenses it considerably, and you won't need as many resources as far as how you operate the school as far as manpower is concerned. But not to get rid of them totally, but to actually have those extra teachers do more interventions and making sure that they're timely. That might afford you the opportunity to hire more counselors, to do more social and emotional learning kinds of tasks, and then have those opportunities be credit bearing, so that time spent is well spent and they're actually earning credits for the social and emotional work that they're participating in if the student is that in need of that kind of support. But again, it all goes back to, if we do the overhaul, we're going to also have to be committed to the professional development that's required for it. And I can't reiterate that enough. I've seen so many instances where, we try to implement these things and then try to cut corners. Great ideas, as I like to describe them, we have, we can buy the Lamborghini, but we can't keep up with the maintenance.
Yeah.
Like, that's education.
Yeah.
We go get these,
great programs
and
expensive programs.
Yeah. But when it's time to retrain teachers because of turnover rate, or when it's time to purchase additional textbooks and because the curriculum has changed, you have to be prepared to do that. And it shouldn't be a challenge for principals or school leaders to have to procure those resources if we're all committed to the success of these programs that we're implementing. But again, to me, it just goes back to the whole need for quality professional development, ongoing professional development, for teachers to better support the students that are in front of them versus trying to remember how it was done to them, and thinking because they survived it, these students should be able to survive it as well, because that's how it was done to them.
What's next for Dr. Logan?
Man, that's a good question. That's a good question, man. I know I know my time is winding up, as a high school principal, and not because I'm tired or, disenchanted. I think a lot of the work or a lot of the things that I just described, I would like to be engaged in. I know that's policy work, but I'm not necessarily a big fan of policy. But I want to do something that's going to, have a greater impact on even more students. And so how that looks, it could be pursuing collegiate, working at the collegiate level. I could go into consulting. There's definitely going to be, and there's becoming this scenario where we're seeing a significant gap between my generation, a knowledge gap between my generation and this new generation of folk who are coming in to educate students. And as long as we are reliant on the current system and they have the challenges that they have with today's students, somebody's going to need to be there to help mitigate that as best we can. And so serving as a coach, I wouldn't be above, I actually love the opportunity to coach administrators, coach teachers, because I enjoy leading professional development as well. But again, I know when I first moved to North Carolina and I was working in Wake County, I had to take the praxis to get my license in the state of North Carolina. And what I learned was I had to take it at North Carolina Central University. And as I was passing as I was traveling up Fayetteville Street, I got to Hillside. I didn't know it was Hillside. I didn't know what school it was. I did know, if God told me right then, he's like, that's where you're going to be. Didn't know anything about the school, and that was in 2003. And when I was leaving Central to go back to Raleigh, to go home, I had to pass the school again, and God said, that's where you're going to be. And fast forward the following year, around the same time, that's where I was. And so I listen for God's voice when it's all said and done to let me know when it's time to go. I haven't heard that yet, and so I'm still enjoying the ride as it stands.
When you leave the profession, how do you want to be remembered?
As somebody who tried to do the right thing by everybody he encountered when it's all said and done.
Good stuff, good stuff. Anything else you want to leave us with? We're about to wrap up, and I know you do some principal coaching. Go ahead and let the people know if they want to contact you. How can they contact you?
Absolutely. Best way to contact me is my personal email, williamlogan1113@gmail.com. Definitely interested in working with whoever wants to work with me. If you can't reach me there, then William_Logan@dpsnc.net. Best way to catch me.
Thank you again, Dr. Logan. Thank you all for joining us for another episode. Man, it's been amazing. We got a lot of nuggets. All my aspiring principals out there, make sure you go back and watch this, rewatch it. If you're not an aspiring principal, share it with someone that you know is. There are a lot of nuggets they're going to be able to glean from this. So we want them to take advantage of all the knowledge that was shared on today. But that's it for now. Catch us for our next episode of Principal Interviews. We look forward to seeing you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap.
Yes, sir.